what I used to do a lot before this, all came into my awareness was completely identifying with the feeling. Just, I am afraid and that's all I am right now. Instead of, there's this part of me that's actually afraid, or like fear comes up. Or even when we're talking about feeling, we want to label everything, but maybe if there's constriction in your throat just before you're supposed to, have a speech or something, you can say I'm nervous, but really it's just constriction. It's just a feeling in your body. It's not necessarily anything else. Just bringing awareness to the feeling in your body and bringing breath and relaxedness and energy there can already be enough. We don't always have to label things.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And it's really, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others. That I had it described perfectly as speaking for the feeling, not from the feeling.
Yeah.
And to do that in relationships as well, right? Like, you made me angry, I'm fucking angry. Or
I'm really angry right now.
Yeah. And then you saying, okay, I'm not saying there's a rage in me right now. It's very different. And then what happens, I find, is like, you put it in the center, and then me and you now, we can talk about this thing that's here, rather than you're now in a conversation with rage. Okay, rage is here. What's rage saying? Rage is saying this, that, and the other. I didn't like what you did. And then it either is like a reflection for you, or it's like, actually, this is bringing up an old story, and I can remember this time when blah, blah, blah. So this is a massive part of being then able to take responsibility, because if you are fear, you can't take responsibility for it because you are it. But if you notice fear, and okay, there is fear here, there's also a whole other spectrum of experience, then I can be with fear, I can then have a conversation with it and see what it wants.
Yeah. And just taking responsibility for everything is, I think, a really big thing, especially for men. But not saying that women don't have to take responsibility for anything, but like, I've really noticed my life change as soon as I really chose to take responsibility of feelings, of things that I've done, on the impact that my, expressions have had on others. And even, let's say someone has a trauma on a certain topic, and you, without knowing, you don't know about that, and you share something or address something, and it really hits them. Like, it's not necessarily your fault, and it's not like, it is in that sense their responsibility. And at the same time, there's this part of like, okay, can I just reflect and look back at myself? Was this the most loving way I could have expressed this? Was this the most caring and most compassionate way that conversation was being had? Or was I being a little bit neglective, or a little bit like egotistical, and just really trying to embody love and compassion more and more? Yes.
And I think there's a really important point here, which is, for me, when I feel like I'm not enough, or I feel afraid, I go into a good boy tendency sometimes. And that'll either create submissiveness, and responsibility will look like, I fucked up, I did wrong, I should have done differently, in this kind of sense of like
placing yourself below someone even.
And then I'm pandering to them, and then betraying myself in some way, and it's never going to work out. Or I rebel against this feeling of I fucked up, and I'm like, fuck you, because I don't want to feel not enough for the ways in which I've made you upset. And then it's really like just owning all the ways in which I'm creating the circumstances for what I say I don't want. And I remember, like, it was maybe even last week, I was in my men's group that I run. There's 15 of us in the space, and we do an integrity round. So checking in your integrity, my integrity with my commitments and agreements I've made with myself, with the men in the group, so if there's an emotional charge, right, is there something unsaid, and then with my broader community, so my friends, my family, colleagues. And we're going around one by one, and these guys are, taking radical responsibility and being in radical integrity with themselves. I go around, I think, I'm fine, I'm in integrity this week. And as it goes around and I'm listening to where there's not an integrity, I recognize that Bia and I, on the Monday before, we had like one of our biggest blowouts, and I'm feeling very like resentful and righteous in the way that she spoke to me, just like wasn't okay. And I was still with this desire to have a conversation with her about how it wasn't okay the way she spoke to me. So I'm hearing these guys take, this responsibility. And I realize by the time it gets to me that I'm responsible for what happened, not because I'm a bad guy, I created it, or that it's okay for her to speak to me that way, but I was reflecting on, did I give her space to really connect with what she felt behind the aggressive front, behind the reactivity? And I was thinking about what I did, and I was like, no, I was just pushing more into my point and saying, well, no. So then she was fighting back. And in NVC, they say, in nonviolent communication, they say, the first act of war is defense. And it was this, and I was like, yeah, I was defensive the whole time. So I built this pressure cooker up to the point where at the end, Bia was like, fuck you. And then I was like, so righteous about this, like, that's so, that's not our relation. And then like, it was beautiful because I could go home and say, look, the way that you spoke to me wasn't okay for me. And I can see how I created that. And I can see how I created the conditions where that would happen for you. And I felt resentful that I had found it. I was like, fuck, and I have to take responsibility. But it was liberating because I could finally stop my own bullshit and my own drama. I could stop creating this power dynamic between us and say, you know what, like, I get it. I get how there wasn't a space for you from me to really drop into, actually, I feel really scared, which is what happened in the end. And we spoke about that. And as in all relationships, when we're triggered, it's actually just, I'm really scared. And my inner boy is just feeling fragile, my inner girl. So yeah, just a little example of what it might look like to take radical responsibility. And it's an ongoing process of 100%. Catching ourselves.